Okay, so good evening and welcome to tonight's GCSE exam workshop. This one, of course, is a free one for everybody, which is why there are so many of you here, which is fantastic. And the focus will be on the theme of family and community within A Christmas Carol. So if you're not studying A Christmas Carol, then this might not be the right workshop for you, but you are welcome to stay and see what it's like and see if it would be something you'd like to come to in future. So this is how the workshop will run this evening. It's split into 4 parts. The first part is looking at assessment objectives and making sure we're really clear on what it is the exam is testing us against. Part 2 of the workshop is the pre-workshop task, which was sent to you in advance. If you've had a chance to do that, fantastic. If you haven't, don't worry at all. That's fine. You'll still be able to take part. Part 3 is the example essay. So at that point in the workshop, we will look at the example essay that I've sent. Hopefully you've had a chance to read through and we will pick out some good and not so good parts of it and talk about what feedback we would give it. And then finally, the post-workshop task is where we do a little bit of planning for the task that you can do independently after the workshop and hopefully apply everything that you've learned and practiced and revised during the workshop into your own essay. Now, your mics are set off, so even if you tried to turn them on, don't worry, I can't hear you. And your videos are optional. I can't see any of you right now whilst I'm recording, so if you do put your video on, that's fine. It won't be part of the recording. And particularly when you're in breakout rooms, though, it is nice to put your video on if you can, but that's entirely up to you. So the way that we'll interact and chat will be through the chat box, and we can talk to each other at any point during the workshop there. And of course, again, in the breakout rooms, that will be your chance to have some small group discussions with other students. So talking of other students, why don't you all put in the chat box where your nearest city is, sort of where you're based? So I'm going to put mine in. So I'm actually in Leighton Buzzard, but my nearest city is Milton Keynes. I know there's a few of you actually from Milton Keynes. So let me know where you are. Oxford, Hemel. Okay, we've a bit of 3 counties there. Wow, okay. Oh, I'm loving that there's a lot of people from Milton Keynes. I feel a lot more relaxed now about delivering a workshop to so many of you, knowing that I've got some nearby buddies. Doncaster, Reading, fantastic. Gloucester, Southampton, Chester, Benfleet, Liverpool, Southampton, Manchester. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, Dublin. I think Harrison, you're probably the furthest then. So extra big welcome to you. So one of the really amazing things about these workshops are, we've got someone from Ruislip, which is exciting because that's where I started my teaching career. But if we can avoid annotating on the screen, that would be amazing because there are 45 of you live at the moment. And if everyone starts annotating, it gets a bit crazy. So yeah, one of the great things about these workshops is that you're all from different schools, from different parts of the country, in different countries. And you've all been taught A Christmas Carol by different teachers in different types of schools. Some of you are year 10, some of you are year 11, some of you are year 10 and maybe hoping to get that 4 or 5 in year 11. Some of you will be in year 11 and already working at a grade 9. So the mix of ideas and influence is really broad. And that's why I always really recommend that you go into the breakout rooms because it's just really interesting to see what other people are coming up with because it's not like doing group work with people at school because of entirely different types of people. Right, so let's get started. So who would you say is the proudest character in A Christmas Carol and why? You can let me know in the chat box. Lots of Bobs. Leo says, was it Leo who said Fred? Oh, we've got a Fezziwig. Um, Austin says Fred. Christopher, there's a lot. There's a lots of you saying Bob and lots of you are saying Fred, which is great. Poppy and Harley are saying Scrooge. George, thank you. You've actually explained why you've picked Fred. George says Fred, as he is happy regardless of his uncle's ideas. Okay. Maybe we've all got really different interpretations of proud, and that's why we're getting such a variety of answers in the chat. Because sometimes if someone's really proud, they're, not able to ask for help. But proud can also mean that, really happy with themselves. Okay, interesting. We've got a few Scrooges as well. Amelie says Scrooge. Claire says Marley. That's really interesting. Why would you say Marley, Claire? And Harley says Scrooge because he acts like his ideas are superior to others and refuses to listen to others in the first stave. I think Scrooge is actually a good one because he is quite reluctant to accept help, isn't he? He's very sort of proud in that sense, and not willing to sort of see his inadequacies. Right, really interesting. Well done. Thank you for those of you that shared some ideas in the chat box. Let's move on to the first proper part of the workshop this evening, and that is the assessment objectives. So what you can see on the screen at the moment are the assessment objectives that the government sets out to the exam boards. Now, all of my workshops, unless I'm very specific about, this is a power and conflict workshop just for Edexcel, for example, all of my workshops focus on assessment objectives rather than exam boards. And for that reason, it doesn't matter which exam board you are studying A Christmas Carol with, this workshop will still work for you because the government gives the same assessment objectives to all of the exam boards. Now, I've picked out some of the key vocabulary there, but it can still make it a bit wordy and confusing to understand. So I've got a sort of summarized version for you here. So you might be quite familiar with these already, particularly if you're in year 11. So AO1 is your informed personal response and how well you know the text and all of the ideas that you have on it and your opinions on it. And it also includes quotes and textual references. Now, don't forget that textual references is where you refer to things that happen in the novella. So you're not necessarily quoting words, but you're showing that you know about the different things that happen. AO2 is the analysis of language, form, and structure. So looking at the words that are used, how it's been put together, how it flows, the meaning that comes from that, exploring the effects of all of those things, and crucially, subject terminology. So that's AO2. AO3 is the wider context. So that's what you know about the social, cultural, and historical context of the text. But crucially, it's using that information to support the points that you are making. Okay, not just like including a big paragraph all about Victorian London. That wouldn't get you any marks for AO3, but using that information as like almost like extra evidence for a point that you're making about language, for example, then that would count. And finally, AO4, which is your spelling, punctuation, and grammar. But we're not going to focus on that today because we do only have 1 hour, and actually we have less than 1 hour now. Harrison says, is AO1 like knowledge of the text? Yeah, it's knowledge of the text, but also, if you'd like to look at the exact wording, if we come back here, it's being able to read, understand, and respond to text. So having an informed personal response, so knowing the text and having your own take on it, your own ideas on it. So things like, you know, where you've all come up with a character you thought was the proudest, that would be AO1. That's your opinion. And you know the characters and you know the text. So which of these assessment objectives do you find easiest and which do you find most difficult? This is always really interesting to see in the chat box, the wide range of things that you all find easy and things that you find difficult. Let me know in the chat box. Otis says AO3 is easiest. That's great. I love it when people say AO3 comes really easy and natural to them. Okay, Jill says context is hard to fit in. It is. We will touch, though, on how to integrate that into your writing. So that might be really helpful for you. Millie says AO3 I find easy. I'm good at historical context and stuff. AO2 is really hard for me, though. I think AO2 is hard for a lot of people, actually. And actually, even if you think you find AO2 quite easy, when it's assessed, it's like the quality of your AO2. So we could all always improve that aspect and element of our writing. Azra says AO2. Is that AO2 easy or AO2 hard, Azra? Sarah says AO2 is easy. Myra says AO1 is easy. Well, fantastic. You must know the text quite well, and that's a really, really good start. And that leads into being good at AO2 and AO3. Really interesting to see. Okay, fabulous. So let's move on to the pre-workshop task, and we will continue talking about the assessment objectives as we move into this task. So we're taking what we've looked at in part 1 and we're moving it into part 2. So we're going to start with this very short quote that was on your pre-workshop task. It's taken from When the Ghost of Christmas Present takes Scrooge to see the Cratchits' Christmas Meal. So you might be familiar with that part if you've read the whole play, the whole text, but if you haven't, don't worry. So what can you learn from this quote? Crammed spoons into their mouths, lest they could shriek for goose before their turn came to be helped. Now, the first thing that's really useful to do is look at different word classes and what they might mean, the different types of words in there. But I'm going to give you a moment to share in the chat box what you came up with. We're going to see such a range of ideas on this one because it's one of those quotes that you can talk about in entirely different ways. Amelie says, I think crammed spoons into their mouths depicted how hungry they were and reflects their poverty. Yeah, so that, you know, the verb crammed is almost sort of a panicked or a high pace verb. So that might suggest their sort of desperation to eat. So that's a really cool idea, Amelie. I like that. Shrieks evokes childish enthusiasm. Their joy is so great it can hardly be contained. Yeah, absolutely. Shriek is, but maybe that also ties in with making them sound impoverished because they're just so excited to have a good meal. But it certainly gives a sense of sort of a joyful enthusiasm, maybe childish enthusiasm, and really good quality family time. Dylan says, crammed and shriek are vivid verbs creating a dynamic and lively setting, energetic and enthusiastic about what they have, even though it's not much. Really nice there, Dylan. Well done. Just looking at all the excellent answers in the chat box, it's making me feel very reassured that everybody spent time on their pre-workshop tasks. So well done. Sophie says, it just goes to show about the poverty involved and highlights that they are grateful for the food. Absolutely. Ewan says, there is use of juxtaposition, hyperbole, and irony. Where? Tell us. Leo says the hyperbole crammed spoons into their mouths suggests the eagerness of this annual event depicting how impoverished the Cratchit family is. Interesting. Otis says they are well brought up, waiting for their turn to be served, showing that despite their poverty, they have developed manners, as to the strong portrayal of Bob Cratchit as a good father. Absolutely. So I think that's quite, although it's quite easy to look at this quote and see it as a one that shows the negative side of, you know, them being hungry and poor and grateful for this, you know, small meal that they have, or special meal. It also shows that, you know, they're a joyous, happy family. They take their turn. They've been raised well, and also ties in with that AO3 wider context idea that, you know, the impoverished working classes were not sort of subhuman, and actually the readership of A Christmas Carol would have been sort of wealthy middle class people, and, you know, this might be the only real insight they would have into a family like this. Okay, fabulous. Oh, look, there you go. I highlighted some of the vocabulary that we could have talked about. When you get a quote, or in the exam, when you get your extract, and if you can't find any quotes that support the point that you want to make, a really good thing to do is just start looking at the verbs that are there. Can you say anything about those verbs? And sometimes that's a really good starting point to lead you into some really interesting ideas. Okay, pre-workshop task number 2. How could you extend this paragraph to show deeper analysis? So I've actually color-coded it for you already, so you can see which part would be AO1 and which part would be AO2. So AO1 would be, although the Cratchits' Christmas meal is seemingly meagre and simple, everyone had enough. So you've got a quote in there as well, and a reflection that you know what you're writing about, or that the student who wrote this knows about the novel. This simple statement would be technical language. This simple statement is a further demonstration of the Cratchit's gratitude, which Dickens uses to distort the harsh realities of poverty in Victorian England. Ooh, so even though that is analysis, it is sort of tiptoeing into AO3, isn't it? It's starting to use a wider understanding of what was going on at the time to help us better understand the text. So what did you write next? What does this need? What is it missing? How did you extend it? You can put the next part in the chat box. It's really nice to see what Dylan and George have written. If anybody's a bit stuck, definitely have a look at what people are writing in the chat box. Um, Lots of you have focused on that word enough, which is really important because not only does it reflect that the Cratchits have enough food, but actually they have enough of something else that's really important, and that's sort of family and community and love and support, and something that Scrooge doesn't have. So there's a real juxtaposition there of what what enough means for Scrooge and for the Cratchits. Fab. Some really nice. If you're still typing, carry on. But I am going to show you a possible extended answer, color coded, of course. You're going to get really used to the green and the turquoise and the royal blue. Okay, so although the Cratchits' Christmas meal is seemingly meagre and simple, everyone had enough. This simple statement is a further demonstration of the Cratchits' gratitude, which Dickens uses to distort the harsh realities of poverty in Victorian England in order to appeal to the reader's sympathy. Indeed, by portraying a Christmas with traditional dinner and religious emphasis, as Grace was said, so integrating another quote from the same part of the play, not play, text, sorry, I've been doing an in spectacles today. Dickens points to the similarities between the Cratchits and wealthy readers' celebrations, reinforcing their responsibility to those of all social standing within their community at the time the novella was written. Okay, quite wordy there, but really cleverly including some AO3 commentary there. So thinking about who the readers were and how this might have, or how they might have interpreted it, what they would have made of it. Leo, I'm going to read yours out because I know that you always write excellent things. The adjective enough suggests the adequacy of the meal, subverting the Malthusian notion of surplus population, presenting how Dickens believed that Malthus disregarded the surplus population depicted by the everyone, i.e. the Cratchit family. Good. Leo, were you at the last Christmas Carol workshop, the one in September? Lovely. Okay, really nice. The Hempsons have said Dickens presents the lower class families in the book with the semantic field of light, and as kind, polite people. He also shows the importance of family and the ideological or the ideal family of the time by using the verb shrieked to present the children as excitable and loving. Oh, from the last quote. Okay, really good there. If you're going to say that there's a semantic field of light, then you would need to give a couple of examples at least. Emily, I'm going to read yours out before we move on. The language of everyone had enough, though, could be taken as food, could also be seen as meaning they had enough in their lives and were content with how they lived, despite the struggles they faced living in poverty. This is a harsh difference when compared to Scrooge, who always strived for more, feeling as though the wealth he had was never enough, reflecting that while the less fortunate could have less, they were content with their lives, while Scrooge, a wealthy man, was unsatisfied. Absolutely. I think it certainly starts to introduce this idea, doesn't it, that, money isn't everything. Good. Okay, some lovely answers. Let's move on to the next one. So this one you'll notice is all green. So it's only AO1. That means there's no analysis, there's no subject terminology, and there's no wider context. So that should give you a little hint about what this paragraph needs to be extended to show deeper analysis, to start collecting in those marks. Okay. I'm going to give you a moment to share some ideas in the chat box of what you would put next. Oh, I didn't actually read it out, so I'm going to read it out. Dickens presents the importance of community by describing the impersonal nature of schools of by-streets, lanes, and nameless turnings, innumerable people, showing how vital community is at bringing people together. If anyone's finding this one a bit tricky, that's completely normal because whilst this is a great quote that you could say lots of things about, the point that's being made here is that community is important, but the focus is to show that it's important. It's showing the impersonal nature of it, or the impersonal aspect of it. So it's a multifaceted point that you're analysing here. Great idea, George. George says that despite so furthermore, the use of nameless suggests that even despite a lack of identity with other people, community still brings people together. Yeah, so the power of community sort of transcends identity. Harrison says, I talked about how nameless is used to create an isolated sort of feeling within the reader, as it shows them how important their community is to them. It's a great idea, Harrison. This carries the weight of Dickens' personal opinion that we should be more connected and friendly towards each other. Excellent. You've got some AO3 in there as well. Really good. Well done. If anybody's a bit stuck or is new to A Christmas Carol, please have a read through all the different answers. Even those of you that are very familiar with it, read through all of the different answers, because this is just a really good example of what I was saying at the start of the workshop, that you've all learnt about A Christmas Carol from different teachers and in different ways, because you've all got really different ideas that are written in really different ways. It's really interesting. Okay. Let's have a look. Let's see what we did with this. So in this improved answer, you can see simply by the colour coding that we've got some analysis and some wider context. So I'm going to read it through, but also remind you that you are welcome to screenshot or take photographs of the screen at any point during the workshop, provided there isn't anybody else's videos turned on. And everyone will get a recording of this session as well, so you can come back and look at parts of it if you want to. Okay, let's read just the extended part. The rule of three used here, so we've got a technique, haven't we? We've got subject terminology. When infused with Christmas spirit, makes the community seem bigger. Dickens uses the word innumerable to remind the readers of the huge numbers of people who went hungry because of Sabbatarianism. And in the extract, the ghost is very much interested in these people, yet again reminding us that we have a common duty, regardless of religion, to show responsibility for the poor at Christmas, but also throughout the year. So really nice integration of the wider context there. Okay, so let me just check that time. The timing is perfect. Hopefully we won't run over. Those of you that have been to many of my workshops before, you'll know that I do like to chat. And we get a bit carried away with the ideas sometimes, but we're fine. We should finish on time this evening. We're on to part 3 of the workshop, where we're going to look at the example essay and practice a bit of deeper analysis off the back of that. So if you have got this printed to hand, or if you've got it on another screen nearby, make sure you have it in front of you. Hopefully you had a chance before the workshop to have a quick read over. If you didn't know, don't worry, you will have time now. What I would like you to do with the example essay is to read over it, skim read over it. You don't need to read the extract necessarily. The bit in the box is the question. Just read the typed answer. And annotate where you see really good examples of AO1, AO2, and AO3. If you've got highlighters, you can use my color coding if you want to. And if it's helpful for you, you can create a little table like the one on the screen where you can pick out a really good example of each and jot them down. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do this, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms so you can share your findings with each other. If you've already picked out a couple of examples for AO1, AO2, AO3, or their lack of, then see if you can establish what you think is this essay's strength and weakness. So, you know, are they really good at AO2 and they've got lots of subject terminology, or, you know, do they, you know, not seem to fully understand the novel and therefore AO1 is quite weak? See if you can establish that, and we will probably head into breakout rooms in the next couple of minutes. Okay, before I open up the breakout rooms, Millie asked me a really good question in the chat box. She said, are there any good revision guides for A Christmas Carol that you would recommend? I think the York Notes revision guide and workbooks, you can get a workbook and a revision guide, are the best ones. I think they're fantastic. They work really well for me. So those are the ones that I recommend. But if anybody is not sure and you want to, you can get your adult to email me afterwards and I'll tell them which ones I think are the good ones. Okay, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms now. We will take a couple of minutes. In the breakout rooms, you can share the examples of the different assessment objectives that you found and decide what you think is the strength and the weakness of this essay. And if you don't go into the breakout room, then you can let me know in the chat box what you think is the strength and the weakness of this essay. Okay, whilst we wait for everybody to come back from the breakout rooms, if you just let me know in the chat box, which assessment objective do you think this essay does really well, and which assessment objective do they need to improve? Okay, looks like everybody's back. So what did we make of the essay? I'm just going to briefly say as well, somebody messaged me and said, I find it really difficult to include AO3. Is there any specific techniques I could use to help that? I have got a workshop in, I'm going to say February, I'm not sure exactly when it is, that will look specifically at the wider context of A Christmas Carol. I've got a separate one for Macbeth, a separate one for An Inspector Calls, and we will look specifically at that. But a really good tip I always think is on the end of within the last sentence that you've written for your paragraph, think, can I somewhere include the effect on the original reader or the effect on a modern reader? And that might start to give you sort of roots into talking about the wider context. Okay, so feedback, what do we think? Otis says lots of AO2, not enough AO3. I think you might be right. And Leo says strength is AO2, weakness is AO3, so you're in agreement with Otis. Azra says lots of AO1 and AO2, but not as much AO3. Yeah, whoever gave you the thumbs up, they're right. Olivia says the same thing. Well done, Olivia. Chloe, Chloe. Okay. Well, that's Chloe, if you're talking about this particular essay, then that would be your feedback of this essay, that they haven't deeply analysed one quote. Good. George says AO2, A3. Yeah, I think everyone is in agreement. Let's see what the examiner thinks. I've colour coded the feedback, again, to help you link it to the assessment objective. This essay is written with confidence, with a good but not excellent selection of quotes to support their points. They do, however, use many textual references and clearly know the novel well. There is very little deep analysis of the novel's language, form, and structure. There is limited use of subject terminology, and many missed opportunities exist to explore the effect of language, form, and structure on the audience. So that's interesting, because lots of you thought AO2 was pretty good. And actually, this might be tie in with Chloe's feedback, that she's taught to use one quote per paragraph. I think sometimes a second or a third one to support the point you're making is good, but that's fine. One quote and then deeply analyze it. And this essay is sort of skimming over the analysis, and it's light analysis rather than deep analysis. Back to the feedback. They have woven in vague knowledge of the wider context, but this feels superficial and is not used to further their points in a meaningful way. And that's what I was saying at the very start about the wider context. You have to kind of use that information almost like additional evidence to prove your point or to support your point. It does say, though, it is very well written and provides the formality of higher level essays. So their writing style is good, but their depth maybe not so. Dylan, that's a really good tip there. Dylan's teacher says, write a lot about a little. And that kind of ties in with the deep analysis task that we're going to do next. So a student was asked, how does Dickens present the character of Fred, Scrooge's nephew? Now we've got the first little part of their analysis. We've got a quote. I defy him. If he finds me going there in good temper year after year and saying, Uncle Scrooge, how are you? If it only puts him in the vein to leave his poor clerk £50, that's something. Okay, so how would you analyse this? Obviously, you wouldn't use the whole big quote in your essay, but you could embed words or phrases or sections of it. So let's see what you can come up with. You can do it in the chat box. Let's see how deep you can go. And for Dylan and Chloe, who have been very well trained at deep analysis, then maybe they can you can focus on like one word or two words within it and see how deep you can get your analysis. Some really nice ideas in response to the question, how does Dickens present the character of Fred? But we've got this quote. So let's see if we can use this quote in our analysis. Can we analyse what this quote tells us about Fred and about Scrooge? Lots of really, really good answers. Um, Sarah, I'm just going to sort of add a question to yours or maybe extend your idea. So Sarah says, Fred is hoping that his positivity will rub off on his Uncle Scrooge. This is demonstrated by if he puts him in the vein. I mean, even the word vein, we could talk about that. The idea of like veins and like blood, and if Scrooge is anything like the rest of his family, like those blood ties, that maybe Scrooge has got that sort of kindness inside him as well that Fred does. The thing about language analysis is, provided you've got an explanation, you can say almost anything, really, as long as it makes sense. So you can pick out a word and think, well, what about poor? So he's Paul Clark. The use of that adjective there, is that providing a contrast with, the people that are in Scrooge's life, like his Paul Clark, with the people who are not in his life, like his family, like Fred, who really do care about him. Just something to think about. Again, if you're a bit stuck, or even if you're just really interested, have a look at other people's ideas in the chat box. Right, let's see what we've got. So here we do have some deeper analysis. The color coding this time is literally just the comment is color coded to match the part of the quote that it is analysing. So it's not to do with the assessment objectives. It's just to make it easier for you to understand what bits I've picked out. The verb defy and repetition in the phrase year after year show Fred's persistence to help Scrooge, highlighting Dickens' wish for the society of the time to help those less fortunate, regardless of their preconceptions. So, I mean, that could even be stretched a bit further to really make a very solid AO3 comment. Dickens' use of anaphora, starting multiple sentences with if, gives the reader the opportunity to compare themselves to Fred, considering their own goodwill and if they are able to emulate the same kindness as Fred to those around him. So again, we've just got that one word, and you can really work quite a lot about that. That idea could even be extended as well. Harrison, what is anaphora? Anaphora is when you have a word or phrase repeated at the start of multiple sentences or multiple clauses. So you can see if being at the start of two sentences. Epiphora is the opposite of that. So it's when you have your word repeated at the end of clauses or sentences. Okay, so for the last few minutes, we're just going to talk really briefly about the post-workshop task. And here it is. Hopefully you've got it printed. Might not yet, might just have it on another screen, that's fine. Starting with this moment in the novel, explore how Dickens presents ideas about family and home life in A Christmas Carol. And then there's two suggestions of things that you could write about. I'd like you all to share some ideas in the chat box. We won't go into a breakout room because I don't want us to run over, but bullet point some ideas of things that you might talk about in your essay. And if you see a really good idea, from somebody in the chat box, and you can make a note of it, okay, you can take those ideas. That's what workshop is all about. And Harrison saying, so is anaphora a fancy word for repetition? Kind of, it's more like a specific type of repetition, but yes. Really good ideas from Dylan, Claire, Myra, Otis, Emma. Well done, guys. Quite a lot of you talking about the contrast or the juxtaposition that is presented in various ways in the novella. And you're absolutely right. There's, this real sense of, Scrooge's loneliness. And obviously there's that great quote about, him, the oyster one. You could use that. His loneliness, that being contrasted with this sort of family and community that we see from the other characters who might not be as wealthy but are happier. Nice idea, Leo. Well done. Harrison. Harrison's sitting an English literature and language mock next week. Oh, lots of you are. Well, if I have a downloadable mock that you can do for both of those papers. Lovely idea, Chloe. Chloe says Dickens teaches that we all have a duty to look after one another, especially family. He warns if we neglect our responsibility, we isolate ourselves and succumb to fate, to a fate similar to Scrooge, one of misery and avarice. Do you know what, Chloe? That's the whole sort of idea. The whole point of this story is about family and community and how that is what the readership of the time and even the modern readership should focus on. So lots of great ideas for what you would write about. Lots of you got mocks. I feel for you. How stressful. And but you all seem really sort of smart and organised. So I'm sure you're all going to be absolutely fine. And remember, mocks are such a great opportunity because you can have a look at where you've done well and where you need to improve. A little bit like what we did with the example essay. We looked at that and sort of went, well, this bit here is not so good and this needs to be improved. Okay, here are some ideas of things that you might like to write about. So if you are stuck and you do want to have a go, then you can take a screenshot of this or take a photograph. Harrison's pushing me for some advice for English language, so I'll give you a little bit of advice on the end. Okay, post-workshop task. Big questions here that everyone always asks. What should I include? How long should I spend on it? How should you finish? Now, if you've got a really clear format or your English teacher has given you a system and you like it and you stick to it, that's fine. But there will be some of you that don't have that. So for those of you that don't, this might be really useful for you. So you should start with an introduction or an introductory phrase or sentence in the first paragraph. I don't like a big paragraph introducing texts. I think it's a waste of time. You can just sort of start with your first main paragraph and then followed by a minimum of 3 paragraphs, depending on what grade you're aiming for, but up to 5 or 6, with one idea explored in each paragraph. Deeply explored. And if you're adding in extra quotes, then they should be to support the point and idea that you've already been exploring, and always in chronological order. You should spend 30 to 40 minutes writing, depending on your exam board. And if you're not sure, ask your teacher about your specific exam board, or you can always email me. And you should finish with a short conclusion that summarises what you've discussed and some sort of final thought that answers the question. So what can you do next? Well, you can complete the post-workshop task in your own time. Usually I give light feedback on any post-workshop task, but as this is a free workshop and whilst there's been 45 of you live, 150 people have signed up. So I'm not sure I can promise to do that for everybody, but I am happy to have a look if I can. If you've got any questions, you can ask me in the chat box and you can book your next workshop on my website or get your adult to do that. And these are the upcoming workshops and mocks that I am running, so you can have a quick look through those, because everybody that's here this evening can use, or their adult can use the code TASTER20. I'll just put it in the chat box for 20% off all of my workshops and mocks. Give that to your adult if you're thinking of coming to one of my other ones. Chloe, that's a stylistic way of doing it, and actually it provides you more time to do your analysis if you leave those things off. I don't like an introduction. I do like a little bit of a conclusion, but I have checked with an examiner, a GCSE and A-level examiner, and there is no exam-specific way of doing it. Harrison, good question. My workshops are normally £30 each, but obviously with the 20% discount, they are 24. Glad you found it useful, Dylan, and Danny, and Bethany. Right, it's been lovely having you all here this evening. Good luck in your mocks. My top tip, Harrison, if you're still there, is to introduce your quote with the technique before the quote. I like it that way. I think it makes for nice writing. You're welcome, Sean. Bye, guys. Well done for this evening. See you later, and good luck in your mocks.